What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Dear Miss Fantasy Show with me, your host, Tera Roberts. This is the official mailbag show for Player Profiler. It is Wednesday, July 9th, and as you can see, I got myself a new intro video, so I'm feeling super professional now. Let me know what you think. I am taking your questions live, and we are going to dive right in. This is going to be a very fun show. I think it's going to be a long show. I'm going to try to not make it long because, as you guys know, I do golf DFS, and this week is the Scottish Open. So, I have lines to make by 1 a.m. my time because that is what time they are teeing off over there in Scotland. So I can't be too long on this, but we've got a ton to talk about. Today's week's topic is things to watch out for as we head into training camp, because we are right here. First training camp starts Saturday, the LA Chargers, I believe, and then the vast majority start at the beginning of next week. So it is going to be super fun. We are finally officially in that mode, and training camp is where everything starts to matter. We get all of our amazing hype videos. So get locked in. We're going to talk about things that we need to look out for, players that we need to watch, battles that we need to look out for, volatile backfields, year 2 receivers with breakout potential, quarterback clarity, receiving core depth charts, target competition, alignment clarity, all that and so much more. And we're going to go ahead and start things off because I said we got a nice, fun, and very packed show here. I'm going to start us off with a mailbag question because it ties perfectly into today's topic. In fact, like the entire thing ties perfectly. So I'm just going to weave it all in together, and then we've got a couple more. So it's going to be a fun free flow show. But the first question is from Phobos456 on Twitter. Who are the best sleepers to target at the end of fantasy football drafts that have top 10 RB1, tight end 1, and wide receiver 1 upside? I love the phrasing of this question because it's who we're looking for those home run picks. It's either someone who is truly going to hit or could potentially be a big miss, right? Because we're looking for those massive league winning upsides, the guys that we want to target who can be true, viable top 10 options. Because there's always guys that we target because, hey, we think that they can get a little bit of volume, be a viable flex play. Like let's think of a guy that we might be looking at the end of fantasy drafts, like a Keenan Allen right now, because we know once he lands with a team, right, he's still got a little bit of juice in there. He served his purpose in Chicago last year. Handled some good volume. Honestly, was for a while there the most technical, reliable receiver in terms of volume in Chicago. So, we're like, hey, we're waiting for him to land somewhere, but we know that he doesn't have wide receiver 1 upside at this point. There's no real location where he's going to sign and suddenly ascend to the Keenan Allen that we used to know. We know that that's like in the past. So we would be drafting him as a bench filler with a potential flex option. But the guys that actually have true top 10 upside, who are those guys? We're looking at late rounds. So I want to look at guys that are being roughly ranked or in ADP higher than 130. And this first one, I'm mildly cheating because I say 130 and I added in roughly because he's technically like right under that. It is Christian Kirk, whose ADP is currently 128. I'm going to defend Christian Kirk a little bit here. There was something very strange about Doug Peterson's preferences in his offense and alignment and snaps that kind of left Christian Kirk out in the cold when it came to the entire receiving core being healthy. I dug in. I tried to find some kind of underlying logic as to what the heck he was doing. And the only thing that I really found that was an anomaly in 2024 was that his ADOT, Christian Kirk's ADOT, got significantly higher than it had been the past couple of years. So maybe that had a little something to do with it. But when we're looking at him with the Texans, they need experience in the slot. And Christian Kirk fits that bill perfectly. We know that the Texans want to push more volume with CJ Stroud. We know that if the offensive line holds, there's enough volume for Nico Collins and Christian Kirk to put up strong numbers. Now, again, this is Nico Collins as the wide receiver 1. Make no mistake. I'm not asserting that Christian Kirk is going to take over. But when we're looking at the potential volume in the slot, there is definitely enough volume to make him kind of a borderline wide receiver 1 if things flip back very much so in CJ Stroud's favor. This is something that we have to pay attention to during training camp. If Christian Kirk is clearly clearly serving as the main slot guy. There is no competition from Jalen Knoll. We're not getting any of that hype for Jalen Knoll. Christian Kirk would be an absolute steal, because even if we do start to feel super comfortable with him, I don't think his ADP is going to rise significantly. This is still a guy that we'll be drafting in double-digit rounds. Stefon Diggs last year was operating in the slot majority of the time last year. We obviously don't have a full season long of sample sizes for an entirely healthy receiving core for the Texans last year for obvious reasons. But I did go through and parse things out. Weeks 1 through 3 was the only time we had a multi-game clean stretch where all 3 starters coexisted. Stefon Diggs was wide receiver 10, wide receiver 47, and wide receiver 19 of those weeks. I don't hate it. I'm not mad at it, especially when you consider the fact that Stefon Diggs was, and that's somebody who I've defended in the past, but I think we've kind of come to accept that he's not the Stefon Diggs of the past, right? So I do think that Christian Kirk can thrive in that role and give us wide receiver 2 strong production with wide receiver 1 upside if we get a nice bounce back and stability from this offensive line for CJ Stroud. Before I go into our next, let's see, what was the next one's going to be? We're going to talk about running backs, late round running backs. But before we talk about some late round running backs that I am loving here, we are going to hear a quick word from our sponsor.
Hey, what if I told you there was a Dynasty app where you could get player lifetime values, evaluate trades, including draft picks out to 2028, compare the advanced metrics of 2 players, look up the sentiment, buy, sell, hold on players? Well, there is a mobile app that has all of that and more called the Dynasty Dominator, and it's $5 in the App Store on Google Play. This is my gift to you, the most affordable Dynasty League domination app available today. And if you already have it, the 2025 class is ready to download. Let's go.
Jump in and get that. If you want a discount on that, you can use my promo code Tera, really simple, Tera. All right, let's dive back into the guys that we are drafting late round. These are also guys that we need to be paying attention to, because these training camp battles and training camp production is really going to be what shows us what is what with a lot of these guys here. These backup running backs, though, not so much in terms of training camp that we have to watch out for with these guys, because I think at this point, we're pretty clear on certain backup running backs on certain teams, right? And the 2 that I'm talking about here that I want us to pay attention to are Trey Benson and Will Shipley. Go with me on this, right? Backup running backs technically have a very clear path to RB1 if injury happens. It's everybody. Anybody can get it, right? You just have the running back ahead of you, the lead back, go down with an injury. Suddenly you've got a ridiculous workload and you are a low-end RB1 on a weekly basis. We cannot predict injury, right? But we can look at 2 very specific situations where a fall-off in production and increase in risk might be a little bit higher than usual. James Conner does continue to plug away. And trust me, I've been very pro Conner as one of my favorite reliable RB2s. But the reality is that he's a 30-year-old 3-down back. And at some point, everybody not named Derrick Henry does in fact hit a wall. And Trey Benson is literally perfect in terms of being a 1-for-1 replacement. I am not telling you to fade James Conner, because I don't mind it. But I'm saying if we're trying to parse through and look at some of those later round options in terms of backup running backs that have a more logical progression towards the possibility of the path being cleared for them, Trey Benson is one of those guys. Now, another one that I'm not telling you to fade. When I said Will Shipley, you probably looked at me sideways, because I've had people look at me sideways on that. And it is not my Clemson favoritism on that one. And I am not telling you to fade Saquon Barkley. I'm not saying that, man. I've drafted plenty of Saquon in best ball, but another reality check, the man had 345 carries last season. That's a lot, and it often doesn't bode well for durability the next season. If Saquon were to go down, I can see the Eagles giving Will Shipley the bulk of the workload. And you may be looking at it because I feel like sometimes when you're looking at the Eagle backfield and backups, I feel like people might not take Will Shipley seriously. But looking at that depth chart, it is Will Shipley and A.J. Dillon. And as your resident Packers fan, I'm sorry, but A.J. Dillon is cooked. And there is nobody else on that roster. The Eagles could sign someone and work with the committee, but if that were to happen, their offensive line is good enough to where they would be able to utilize both Shipley and A.J. Dillon. And potentially put the heavier workload definitely on Shipley because he does give a lot more bursts than you would be getting from A.J. Dillon. Even if it's a little bit smaller of a workload, it's still a workload that he would be able to manage very well. And far-fetched as it seems, if you are looking for somebody in terms of a backup running back to stash on the bench that might be able to slide in there, remember that he would be running behind the Eagles' offensive line. That is never a bad thing there. So that's another one at end of drafts that has, one of those backups that would step into an immediately beautiful situation for him. Now back to guys that we would actually be looking out for in training camp to get some kind of tip off in terms of the value that they hold in late rounds. Fantasy drafts for key wide receivers are very commonly those guys. And two that I want to call out here are Kyle Williams and Dante Thornton. Kyle Williams' path is not really ideal here because we're not getting enough in terms of very positive rumors that he will have strong early season usage. But lack of rumors doesn't mean there's not opportunity. I'm willing to take a shot right now because the value is perfectly fine. You're, not having to spend a ton of draft capital on him. And again, we could get a lot more encouragement and progression from him in training camp. There's not a ton that he has to pass up and overcome. It's just the matter of how comfortable can he feel in this offense? Because occasionally, not so occasionally, more often than not, Josh McDaniel's system can be a wee bit confusing. So not super rookie friendly. So it just depends on how Kyle Williams is acclimating to it. So we really want to pay attention to that because he has the talent to pull through and push himself into a starting role within this team. It's just a matter of watching to see how he develops during this preseason and training camp as well. Someone who is definitely getting a lot of positive rumors on the complete opposite end of that is Dante Thornton. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting because unlike New England, where you can argue and say, hey, a healthy Stephon Diggs is going to be the wide receiver one there. In Vegas, there is no wide receiver one. I love Jacoby Myers, but he is a wide receiver too. Does it? I love Jack Bash, but his skill set is kind of conflicting in this offense. Thornton is apparently locked in on the outside and does have a very realistic possibility to be a day one starter. And that is the thing that we need to be paying attention to with him, because if he gets that opportunity with a team that is going to be much improved with a solid running game, with a very solid quarterback in not even just solid running game, a potentially strong year one running game with Ashton Genty, Geno Smith has no problem hitting his wide receivers as well. So this could be a very, very advantageous situation that Dante Thornton has been able to step into. A couple comments here in the chat real quick. What's up, Rachel? And then nice, I got the nice little cosign there on Will Shipley. Yeah, it seems like the organization does have some trust in him for sure. Moving on to, so we've got the running backs that we've talked about in terms of those late round targets that can offer you that top 10 upside. We talked about those wide receivers, those rookie wide receivers. And that's kind of my preference there, by the way, in terms of trying to look for top 10 wide receiver one upside. In late rounds, I do tend to lean towards rookies because it's difficult in terms of veterans. Like, let's say, and I'll talk about this in a second, like let's say a Van Jefferson, right? We'll talk about that receiving core there in Tennessee in a little bit, but let's say we look at a Van Jefferson. Realistically, if you're looking at him as a late round target, factually, he's not going to be a wide receiver one. But a rookie can be anything, right? So when we're looking at those late round wide receiver targets, I do tend to lean more heavily into rookies and take those chances on them just because the potential of their ceiling versus the known and unknown running backs, anybody can get it. Now, tight ends are very interesting this year. We've got a veteran option for you in late rounds and a rookie option for you as well. My veteran option here for late round value that has potential tight end one upside here is definitely going to be Brendan Strange. It's very straightforward. He is the clear tight end one there. He showed promise last year. The only issue here is that he doesn't actually have a very promising path to being the second look in the offense, right? We know what this is going to be with Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter. We're hearing positive things as well. I do think he would out-target somebody like De'Ami Brown, but we're hearing positive things as well. So it's more of a crowded situation. We'll get receiving contribution from the running backs too. But Strange is somebody who is very entrenched and has opportunity. The only additional negative side is that tight end we saw last year in Liam Cohen's offense in Tampa Bay. K. Dotton really arose to extreme prominence when injuries forced it to be a thing. He was around, getting looks, involved on the field plenty, clear tight end one, but volume wasn't really towards him. So Strange is the veteran that I think has the better shot, but not the one that I'm really leaning towards. The one that I'm leaning towards here is a rookie in Mason Taylor. Huge potential here. I put out a video on Twitter, just a little teaser here, but the key here really is that he has the most direct path to being the second look behind Garrett Wilson. And I've gotten some pushback a couple of places because to some people, they think, second look in a bad offense is nothing. When it comes to a wide receiver, maybe you can make that argument. But when it comes to a tight end, it doesn't really matter the level of offense that you're playing in. The second look in any offense is what we're going for at tight end. We can even go back to, like, if you got skepticism and saying this is going to be a bad offense, it's the Jets. It's going to be, Justin Fields, blah, 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 blah. We don't believe in him as a passer, blah, 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 right? Well, but we have seen Justin Fields and form a nice connection in Chicago with Cole Kmet. The 2 seasons, I believe, were 2022 and 2023, where Cole Kmet was a tight end one with Justin Fields. Those, again, were situations where he could have second look in the offense opportunities and red zone usage. That's what we're looking here. So if it happened there with Cole Kmet, there's zero reason that it can't happen with Mason Taylor, because he is definitely the better prospect there. I love Mason Taylor as a prospect. And when you look at him and his body of work, it's somebody who can step in 100% and immediately contribute right off the bat. A lot of times with tight ends, we have to think of a Ben Sinnott not getting the immediate volume there, or not even volume, immediate usage at all in Washington, and the veteran preference going to Zach Ertz. That happens sometimes, but Mason Taylor is a day one ready kind of talent. We're already getting that information. And my God, I only think that training camp is just going to aggressively confirm it. Luckily for us, the ADP is not going to rise significantly, because when it comes to rookie tight ends, at the very least, there's like a 0% chance that he will pass up even a guy like Colston Loveland, just because of the perceived value in terms of talent and draft capital. So we're always going to get a nice little discount here on Mason Taylor, somebody who I really, really love as a late round option in deeper leagues, a must draft option in tight end premium deep leagues. And then somebody who, if you've taken a swing and streaming on tight end and you're, looking to hit the waiver wires early in the season, also somebody that is going to be probably a good week 1 waiver wire ad as well. Other guys that we want to look out for, I did want to point out a couple of other rookie running backs as well. Bashal Tutin, Jaden Blue, Rashard Smith, Kyle Monangai. These are rookie running backs, again, in shaky situations that we can look out for as potential late round targets. And I know a couple of these guys, especially Bashal Tutin, is a late round favorite of a lot of people. But of these guys, my actual 2 preferences here are, ironically, not Bashal Tutin. It's Rashard Smith and Kyle Monangai. These are the 2 guys that I think actually have the best path forward to being that late round hit. When we're looking at Rashard Smith, the main thing here is because we know that Andy Reid is not shy about one, playing young running backs, giving them volume. This is not a situation where, sometimes you've looked at certain offenses like I know in the past we've struggled with the Patriots a lot with them and, not trusting volume to rookie running backs. That's not something that we have to worry about at all with Andy Reid. He's not going to limit you because you're brand new, right? We know that he also will change the dynamics of a backfield like that, right? On a dime. Doesn't care. Like if it ain't working out, he is going to adjust and flip the script. And we also know that Rashard Smith's skill sets align very well with what the Kansas City Chiefs want to do offensively. Patrick Mahomes loves himself a running back who can be used as a weapon out of the backfield for him. So that is another one late rounds. I love taking a little stab at as a potential there and someone that we absolutely have to watch during training camp because there was a lot of ambiguity in that backfield, right? Isaiah Pacheco, we can hope that last year's bad production when he came back from that injury was just the fact that he came back from that injury and being more removed from that and recovered from that he will go back to the guy that he was before. But it's tough when we sat there and watched him week after week get outplayed by Kareem Hunt, who by all means, think back to when we saw him previously in Cleveland, more recent years, obviously. Wasn't particular. He was sitting there battling with Jerome Ford, right? He wasn't particular someone that was in the prime of his career. So the fact that he was Isaiah Pacheco was being outperformed by Kareem Hunt, very concerning there. We can't rule out the possibility that Kareem Hunt can still be a factor as well. Andy Reid likes him. We also had the addition of Elijah Mitchell. I always forget, it's going to rack my brain which San Francisco running back went to which team, but Elijah Mitchell, I'm 99% sure it's you, buddy. We've also got Elijah Mitchell contributing there as well. So we need to really pay attention to how this backfield is shaping up during training camp. When we're looking at Chicago, Monangai is very, very intriguing because I do believe that DeAndre Swift is going to be the RB1 of this offense. Not delusional on that end. He's the guy who is going to start off the season as the RB1. He's going to be the volume guy. But here's the thing. Ben Johnson knows exactly what he can get out of DeAndre Swift in his offense. He knows that. So if Swift doesn't give him what he is looking for right off the bat, there's no need to wait and see because he already saw, right? He knows. So I can see a very realistic scenario where DeAndre Swift maybe struggles a little bit and Monangai earns a RB1 role by mid-season. Or at very least committee work. I could see him a very productive back playing off of DeAndre Swift as well. So potentially maybe looking at him for carving out a little role in terms of goal line carry. So that's someone that we also have to keep our eye out on. Moving on to other things too. So thank you, actually. That wraps up our mailbag question, which I told you I was going to talk about that for a long time. That actually wraps up our mailbag question from Phobos456. That was the entire answer to that question of who are the best sleepers to target at the end of the fantasy football draft at each position. Just because I love the question, I wanted to make it a focal point of the episode, and I thought it was really a good starting place for us to kick things off with everything that we have to look out for during training camp. Because get ready. It's going to be exciting. But let's go into some other things that we need to look out for within training camp. And I want to I've categorized these things so we can walk through it kind of piece by piece. And the first thing that I want to talk about is volatile backfields that we need to watch out for during training camp. We already talked about the Bears and the Chiefs. What we want to talk about right here is the Jags, first of all. So we're going to talk about the Jags, the Patriots, the Steelers, Titans, Chargers, more. My God, it's quite the list here. So let's start off with the Jags here, because I mentioned that Facial Tootin, I didn't recommend him as one of the guys that I was really, really leaning into in terms of late round rookie options, right? And you might be wondering why I didn't include him in that sleeper mailbag question. And that is because I struggle with guys who have consistently had fumble problems. Ball security is tough to fix. And if they can fix it, yeah, he's perfect for Liam Cohen's offense. But I also really need to see what Travis Etienne looks like in this offense because it does suit him very, very well. I mentioned that in previous episodes, I kind of harped on the fact that dead zone running backs are a big problem for me this season. There's a couple of guys that I'm like, okay, I can take a little bit of risk there, but for the most part, the way that drafts are shaking out, I'm leaning towards grabbing a couple of guys early rather than sitting there and playing chicken in the dead zone. But one of the guys that I'm mildly intrigued by is Travis Etienne, just because if there's one guy that I feel like can come out of there on top because of the offensive situation that he's falling into, it is Etienne. Moving on to the Patriots backfield. Ironically, the key to monitoring this backfield is actually monitoring Ramondre Stevenson, not Travion Henderson, and the offensive line. So Ramondre Stevenson and the offensive line. We talked previously about this, so I'll just touch on it quickly. We know that Josh McDaniels wants to use a committee. This is why when I was talking about players who make me nervous, who I'm not taking a lot of, who I don't like using the word fade because it's so like finite. Technically speaking, there's maybe like 3 players in the league that I have as complete fades. Like I will not draft you under any circumstance. So that's why I don't like to use that word, because there's always a case to draft somebody, right? If they fall to a certain point and whatnot. But I am uncomfortable with Travion Henderson because of the fact that we know that New England wants this to be a committee, and we've seen this offense many a times, and it's been one of the more frustrating backfields for us to have tried to find faith in year after year after year. We just need to know how much of a committee that they want this to be, and if Stevenson can be more effective in early down work behind a much improved offensive line, because really that was the big issue last year. Last couple of years, he has been visibly and clearly ineffective. And you can, in fact, blame it on the offensive line. There's a clear correlation there. You can say that his struggles were not unique to simply him, right? So we want to look and see what this offensive line is looking like. If Ramondre Stevenson can get behind it and look like an improved player, and if he can garner that short yardage work, those goal line touches and whatnot, just so we can understand what Travion Henderson's role is going to be. Is it truly going to be potentially a 3-down back featured role, or is it going to be more like a James White kind of electric role there? And can he capitalize on it? So that's another one that we're really paying attention to here. Another one here, these backfields are going to start to get for those next couple, they're going to get a little sad here. The Steelers backfield, this one is very frustrating for me. Jaylen Warren versus Caleb Johnson. Top 5 things that we should never trust for 500. Arthur Smith giving a significant amount of volume to a rookie. I feel like we've got amnesia here. Like I felt like we got amnesia with the New England backfield and we forgot just how frustrating it used to be. We're getting amnesia here about Arthur Smith's lack of recent love for giving extreme volume to a rookie, as if we don't have the ability to like peek back a couple of years ago and remember how we witnessed the most perplexing rookie split of Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. And suddenly we're not thinking about that. We're supposed to believe that Caleb Williams is going to be leaned on as an RB1. That is so difficult, right? When we're looking at that situation, it's possible, right? And the ADP is fine. And, this is another dead zone running back that I don't hate drafting and putting on my bench because it's your bench. I don't feel comfortable with him as an RB2 because we truly do not know the amount of volume that he's going to get. We've got to look for context clues over the next month to understand what the vision of this backfield is. Because to me, and from what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, I do think that Jaylen Warren is going to be the RB1 of this offense. It's just a matter of how much of an RB1 he's going to be, how much contribution we're getting from Johnson, and if Johnson is going to have the opportunity to just greatly outshine Jaylen Warren, that he's going to warrant them moving away from a committee and moving into just a simple 3-down back role for Johnson, even though we literally saw, again, the force-fed committee of Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. So this is another one that we've really got to pay attention to. The Titans backfield is one that does not involve rookie running backs. It is just a bunch of veterans and us trying to figure out what exactly is going to be the split of workload between Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears. Now, I had a decent amount of Tony Pollard last year, and I'm woman enough to admit that it worked out of sheer luck. Pollard was more effective than what we saw last year in Dallas, and that is good, considering the state of the Titans' offensive line. That sucker was bad. However, he clearly benefited from Tyjae Spears battling injuries, and I fear here that if we see a healthy Tyjae Spears, he will get enough consistent work to make this backfield a nightmare. I don't want to see it or even potentially use it if we've got this situation where neither one of these guys is going to push the other out of the way. Last year, a lot of what we heard heading into the season and a lot of why I did actually like Tyjae Spears more than Tony Pollard last year. It just didn't work out to where at the point where the ADP rose too much that Tony Pollard ended up being the value pick. And you were just like, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and take Pollard. But a lot of what we got last year in terms of preseason and training camp rumors was that this is a 1A, 1B situation. And it just didn't work out because of consistent little nagging injuries to Spears. So it'll be interesting to see how this all works out. Another one that we have to work out that does these next several backfields do, in fact, involve rookies. So we're heading back to the rookies versus the veterans, the ancient trope here. The Chargers backfield, this is a big one for us to watch because say what you want about Najee Harris, he is a coach's running back. He's tough. He's dependable. He's reliable. You know what you're getting out of him. He's the kind of guy that you keep giving reps because why not, man? You know, I put him out there on the field. This is what I'm getting. I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry that he's going to, go crazy and have turnovers and, just do things that I don't expect and, miss block, whatever. He's just a reliable guy. I have no doubt that Omarion Hampton is by far the better player. He's the better athlete. He is the better running back. But will he have the bulk of the workload out of the backfield, or are we going to simply get a committee that caps Omarion Hampton's upside here? The Broncos, another situation here, but I actually feel a little bit different about this one. But it's another situation where we've got a rookie backfield and a new veteran. How is this going to play out? The difference here in this backfield for the Broncos versus the Chargers is that we know that we are just looking for what type of receiving volume that we are going to be getting from RJ Harvey. It's very different than what we're looking at with the Chargers and New England, where New England, where traditional committees have capped the workload. An effective Sean Payton offense could see J.K. Dobbins and RJ Harvey work harmoniously in tandem and still have good fantasy production for RJ Harvey because he does fit that mold of potentially being used in an Alvin Kamara style of usage. Dobbins also, unlike Najee Harris, while Dobbins is the better back, does not have a history of being reliable, unfortunately, here. So I still hold out hope for RJ Harvey. This is one that we truly have to pay attention to. The Dobbins signing was frustrating for me because think if he had gone to Dallas or somewhere where there was, realistically a super easy, super clear path for him to become a starter. But no, we get into this situation where we're now worried about a Sean Payton committee here. But the key here is for us to see what type of usage RJ Harvey is giving, because if he is able to ultimately fulfill this role that Sean Payton has been looking for multiple years here, and he hasn't been able to find it. If he can get that out of the backfield, Harvey's ceiling is going to be high, especially because he has that negative aura around him of being old, right? And I don't say that because I'm clearly a lot older than him, but everyone from a dynasty perspective looks at him and he's like, he's old. But we're talking about redraft here, and the potential that he has is not hampered by him being older than the traditional rookie here. Now, the Cowboys. Let's move on to the Cowboys here, and we'll try to go through these next ones a little bit quicker here because this is just like a plethora of information here. The Cowboys, you're probably not going to like my opinion on this one, but we have to pay attention to this one because I fear it's a little more straightforward than we're making it. Jaden Blue as a featured running back is more of a pipe dream. Phil Maffa, again, shout out Clemson, does fit the Cowboys offense traditionally, but we need to actually see him get first team reps for reality is that's a path where he is going to have to earn respect and overcome because he does in fact lack the draft capital, right? So he's not going to be getting those preferences behind those veterans, and he's going to have to overcome a lot of hurdles, right? Miles Sanders has been visibly cooked for 2 years post without an injury excuse that we have for Javonte Williams. I can make an excuse for Javonte and say, well, the ACL, man, that really has been bothering him for the past couple of years. He's feeling better. He's a little bit healthier now. I can't make that excuse for Miles Sanders. There is no excuse. You've just visibly appeared cooked for a couple years now, unfortunately. If Javonte Williams looks fresh in training camp, that is the direction that we have to roll. You're not going to like it, but it is what it is. Last year, I think I said that Rico Dowdle was the guy that was going to be coming out of the backfield. That, in fact, did happen. It just didn't happen as quickly as I thought it would. My gut is telling me here that provided that we see a little bit of burst out of Javonte in training camp, that's the most likely scenario here. Now, there is a reality in which the burst does not come and Javonte continues to look a little bit cooked too. And the reality where we could end up with a committee of young, spry guys, which would, in fact, be Moffitt and Blue, who would function very well off of each other if they wanted to go that direction, but it would take a lot for us to get there. So that would be more of an in-season thing. The Giants I'll touch on real quick because their ADP does make them look like a little tasty situation, but I advise you to proceed with caution in with what you see during training camp. And quite frankly, the Giants' schedule is disturbingly bad. Russ is likely the starter for the first half of the year. I have a hard time believing that the Giants' offensive line is turning around. The backfield is probably more up in the air than you think. I'm not looking to invest in it in any way, shape, or form. Now, the Vikings here, this is the last backfield that we're going to talk about. And it is very interesting because Aaron Jones is the lead back here. But we need to evaluate what role Jordan Mason is going to have in this offense. I dropped some stats previously on the podcast regarding Aaron Jones during my quote unquote fade. I don't like to use that word, but quote unquote fade episode. And Aaron Jones was one of those guys because there are some real glaring issues. The efficiency dropped. He has been wildly ineffective at the goal line. The Vikings specifically stated, this is not conjecture, this is not Tera making an assumption. The Vikings specifically stated they brought in Jordan Mason to alleviate some of that short yardage workload on Aaron Jones. They didn't say it was because he was ineffective, but quite frankly, it was because he was ineffective. And I talked in those stats that I dropped in the previous episode, the workload that Aaron Jones had last year was a major concern for me. They overused him. He had not seen that much work since literally year 1 or 2. I can't remember which one it was, year 1 or 2 of his career. He's 8 deep. That level of usage on a 30-year-old running back was just irresponsible. So we need to look at what level of workload Jordan Mason is factually going to be taking here as to whether or not Aaron Jones can even pay off at his ADP, what level of upside he actually has. Because in addition to that, if they take away the potential for short yardage work, there's not enough pass volume to the running backs in this offense. We've seen it. We've seen this offense, this Kevin O'Connell offense, enough to know at this point that there's not enough there. If they take away those goal line touches for Aaron Jones, his role would be truly affected there. Now we're done with running backs. Oh my God, that was a lot. We've got a lot to watch out for with running backs. Receivers are more fun, in my opinion, because it's not boom or bust with receivers. With running backs, we're trying to find the holes, right? We're trying to find those guys that are going to break out, determine whether or not a committee will be effective. With receivers, it's more of a good time. Year 2 potential breakouts are something that I want to talk about here real quick. And these guys are Xavier Worthy, Ricky Pearsall, Keon Coleman, Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, and just, obviously this last guy is not on that level, but I do think we need to include Roman Wilson. As silly as it sounds, he should not be grouped with that group. But because of the state of the Pittsburgh offense, we do need to include him as well. But regarding Xavier Worthy, real quick, I talked about this before. We have to monitor his alignment during training camp. Rashee Rice is the volume slot guy. I don't see that changing. We need to know how they're going to be deploying Xavier Worthy with Rashee Rice to see what the true potential for Worthy is out of that backfield or out of that receiving core. Now, you guys know, in terms of San Francisco, I am all in on Ricky Pearsall. I believe he is the big beneficiary for Deebo Samuel's exit. And when we're looking at that offense and the fact that Brandon Ayuk probably will not start the season. In fact, when we're looking at guys who were injured last season, your Stephon Diggs, your Chris Godwins and whatnot, Brandon Ayuk is the one that I look at and I try my hardest, man. I try, but it's tough. I try my hardest not to go for players coming off of ACLs, but sometimes it's kind of impossible, right? But and not just ACLs, because Chris Godwin as well wasn't an ACL, but it is tough for me to make the reasoning or the argument for Brandon Ayuk. This is the one that I kind of see as being more so the one that comes in mid-season at best. I'm not feeling positively about it, unfortunately. And his return, if and when it happens, more so affects Juwan Jennings. Ricky Pearsall's late season production was very encouraging. Training camp is something that we need to watch because he was sidelined during OTAs due to a hamstring injury. Sounds like it was just an extreme precaution, but we just need to pay attention in case there could be any nagging residual effects during the season. Hate those hamstring injuries, right? Keon Coleman is another one that could be a breakout star in the Bills receiving core. Nobody has stepped up in the Bills receiving core in quite some time. But Keon Coleman does fit that trope of somebody who could be a bigger contributor in year two. So keep your eye on that one. Marvin Harrison Jr. here. I love the value that we are getting out of him. He's being underrated now simply because we overrated him in his rookie year. Whoops. I contributed to it as well. So I'm not judging anyone that did it. But this is an excellent case where we need to watch like a hawk what they're doing in training camp, because there is no concern about needing development, some kind of extreme development from Marvin Harrison Jr., right? Like I want to see development from Keon Coleman. That's not what I'm looking for from Marvin Harrison Jr. What I'm looking for from Marvin Harrison Jr. is I need to see the Cardinals improving his actual usage. The way they utilized him last year was the direct cause of his production being very underwhelming. We want to see that increased connection with Kyler Murray. We want to see more creativity out of the offense, and we want to see more varied usage from Marvin Harrison Jr. Then the last one that I want to talk about here is Rome Odunze, our designated year two breakout candidate, the one that everyone is tagging as the potential JSN because he fits the build of somebody who is in a crowded offense and with a veteran receiver that, had the wide receiver one role last year, but he could overtake like Jackson Smith and Jigba did last year. If anyone can do it, I do think that Rome can be that guy this year. I cannot wait to see what Ben Johnson has planned for him and how he plans to deploy both Rome Odunze and DJ Moore in this offense so that we can get a clearer picture of what this is going to look like. Because if I'm leaning towards one versus the other, ADP obviously makes me lean a lot more towards Rome Odunze, but in general, I do think he has the higher upside there in terms of the ceiling that we've got. Now let's touch on quarterbacks for a little bit here. Quarterbacks are not fun. The Browns quarterback room, we do have to talk about that because of the way that it affects everybody else on the team. We want stability in terms of the quarterback situation, not because we want to draft a Browns quarterback. It doesn't matter who it is. Not a single one of those guys on the roster is somebody who we would be looking at from a fantasy perspective outside of superflex where we're taking a stab, right? What we are concerned about here is we have a lot of very, very usable weapons that we saw outside of the rookie situation with Quinshon Judkins last year. we saw significant develop with a couple of these guys in Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman. Jerry Jeudy finally stepping up and proving Steve Smith wrong and being that guy and looking fantastic and finally being exactly what we wanted him to be. Cedric Tillman getting the opportunity when Amari Cooper departed and just really stepped up and showcased why he was the prospect that he was and the better bet compared to Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee. And then we also have Javid Njoku, who we always know just has such an incredibly high ceiling if he gets the volume and stays healthy. And then to the rookie, we have Quinshon Judkins, who, despite what, occasionally keeps being said about, Jerome Ford can't, No, I see Quinshon Judkins handling the 3-down back role. Obviously, there's an additional rookie that could contribute on 3rd downs, but Quinshon has the lean towards the volume here. So we have so many usable weapons at very friendly ADPs that we would like to draft. Like, I want to use these guys. I want to draft them, but we need to know what's going on with the quarterback situation here. New Orleans, same situation, same exact situation. We're not looking at the quarterback because we have any interest in that quarterback. We are looking at the quarterback because we care about Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed and Alvin Kamara and even Jawan Johnson. We care about these guys and we want to know what's happening here. We want some level of stability. So unfortunately, we have to watch the Browns and New Orleans quarterback rooms during training camp to try to get a glimpse into the sad future and if there can be some kind of bright spot for our boys. But there is one more that is very interesting. And it's not interesting because now, granted, we do like the skill positions here, but it's not interesting because of the pass catchers and the running back. It is interesting because there's actually fantasy value from whoever starts in Indianapolis. Yes, because they both have that rushing upside. Daniel Jones can scoot. So it's very interesting because whoever does, in fact, become the starting quarterback, and God, cross our fingers, we can get some level of assurance. I don't think we can get some level of assurance. It's tough because we have seen Anthony Richardson pulled on a regular basis. But if we can, so Shane Steichen is not afraid to yank a quarterback out of there, but we need to see what is happening here. And it does seem like it's leaning towards Daniel Jones. That's the way that I think it's going. I felt that way for a while just because off-season / training camp, Daniel Jones, he's a champ. Right? As long as the defense isn't trying to kill you, he can operate fairly well during the offseason, and especially if the defense isn't spectacular, he has been known to give us an extreme amount of false hope. But when we're breaking down which quarterback gives us which opportunities in terms of fantasy, it does affect the receivers in terms of what the utilization of them would be. So if we get Daniel Jones, that would make us feel more comfortable with Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Tyler Warren, right? So if we're kind of picking and choosing here, we should be arguing in favor of Daniel Jones. Anthony Richardson more so benefits guys like Alec Pierce, A.D. Mitchell, because what we have consistently seen from him, and I don't have a lot of faith that that has changed or will change, accuracy is just flat out an issue. Long bombs are his thing, and he can nail a guy downfield, and that is Alec Pierce and A.D. Mitchell. Now, Downs did have some decent games with Anthony Richardson, but is very much so high ceilings dependent on touchdowns, so don't delude yourself into thinking that Anthony Richardson is a good thing for Josh Downs. We would prefer to see Daniel Jones for Josh Downs. Those games where Josh Downs had good fantasy performances were in fact because there was a touchdown attached to them. If you look at the actual targets and receptions, it's disturbing because Downs had an incredibly short ADOT, yet Anthony Richardson still struggled to hit him. Accuracy was not there. You might get 8 targets, you might get 3 receptions out of that. It was not beautiful, unfortunately. So this is one that we've got to watch because there is a significant effect to our pass catchers here. Jonathan Taylor, it doesn't really matter who's starting at quarterback for me. There's nothing that will make me fade him. I like what I saw out of him last year. He's just a beast that continues to make it work regardless of what regardless of what the quarterback situation is. And there was, looking back, and I think I talked about it previously in a previous episode, I dug into the game by game statistics for Jonathan Taylor with Anthony Richardson. There's not a major problem that we need to worry about there. So doesn't matter who's starting there for Jonathan Taylor. Now, receiving cores, let's talk about those again. We're going to circle back to receivers here real quick, because receiving core depth charts, target competitions, and alignment clarity. Want to dive into that a little bit more here to close out the show, because there's a few that we need to really talk about. And I have one that was requested specifically by Mailbag from FH Brian on Twitter, requested the situation for the Titans receivers here. And this one, I'm happy that we got this question, because I am very passionate about that one. Oddly enough, yes, I'm very passionate about the secondary options in the Titans receiving core, even though I'm not super passionate about Cam Ward. And oddly enough, I'm very passionate about Calvin Ridley too. He's an absolute steal at his ADP of wide receiver 34. We talked about this on the last show. He's essentially a lock to outperform his ADP, a solid wide receiver 2, just being underrated. He's not that high end wide receiver 1 upside, but that nice wide receiver 2 that we got going on. Comment there, shout out to Tip Major saying hey in the chat. Also circling back real quick from 2025 waiver wire picks. Yeah, 30, because we were talking about the Vikings backfield. Agreeing with the age of Aaron Jones ahead of Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason is one of his favorite late round sleepers, still available in the late rounds of drafts for sure. That's one that we really, really got to plug into the opportunity there. Back to those Titans receiving core, though. After Calvin Ridley, who again I do love, the question is who steps up behind him. And you might not be concerned about it, because you might not thinking that it matters. Although technically speaking, we got good fantasy production out of the wide receiver 2 last year, the Titans, and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Don't shoot the messenger. It happened week after week. Were we leaning into it in fantasy? But no, it was a fun DFS play. But you can get production even out of this offense here at the wide receiver 2. So the question is, and we'll not exclude, we'll say who's the second pass catcher, right? We'll throw Chigo Okonkwo in there as well. Who is stepping up here in the Titans receiving core? Are we going to see it go to the tight end with Chig finally stepping up? We know that Cam Ward had a nice connection with his tight end there down in Miami. So could Chig be that guy? Do we get a bounce back season here from Tyler Lockett, despite being a little aged up there? Van Jefferson, we talked about earlier. He's the only veteran receiver. We exclude Treylon Burks because, well, that's not happening. But Van Jefferson is also potentially projected to be a starter there as well. But there are a bevy of rookies for us to look at as potential options to step up. And I like all these guys, to be quite frank. Chimere, DK, Alec Ayamor, good Lord, I can't say all these Titans rookie receiving names in a row. Now that I look at it, reading Chimere Dike, Alec Ayamor, and Xavier Restrepo in a row is a stupid tongue twister, and I should have seen that coming from a mile away. Anyway, training camp for our lovely eclectic name of rookie receivers in Tennessee. It's going to be critical for us, because I do believe one of those guys is going to step up and be a viable option in this offense, because Tyler Lockett hit a wall, unfortunately, over the past couple of seasons. Van Jefferson has never been that guy. Quite frankly, 2 of these rookie receivers could be fantasy relevant this year. There's a path to it. We'll start off with the one who was very popular pre-draft in Eric Ayamor, because, they didn't expect him to, unfortunately, get the draft capital that he got. We were expecting a little bit more than that. Despite that, a lot of fantasy analysts still like him as the guy to target from these rookies. I like him, but my guy is Chimere Dike. All throughout the pre-draft process, and I think I spoke about him a little bit in one of the earlier episodes, but all throughout the pre-draft process, he just popped just over and over again. Senior Bowl, Combine, it was just so clear that he is an incredibly well-rounded receiver, that can, in fact, step in day one. And the Titans will prioritize because he has high value on special teams. A lot of times when we're looking at rookie receivers and even running backs as well, when you're looking at rookies and their best path towards usage, a lot of that comes down to who are the guys that can be utilized in multiple areas. So if you can be that big contributor on special teams as a returner, you are going to get a little bit of preference in terms of having a clearer path to reps and snaps. It's just something that happens, right? So targeting rookies, again, who have that clear path to day one usage because of their versatility is what my kids like to call a big brain move right there. The Titans have specifically said that they love the fact that DK can line up literally anywhere on the field, that he is, add in the fact that he's an excellent route runner. You don't have to develop him there. He's got great hands. He showcased surprising speed at the combine. Overall, yeah, this is a guy that I have drafted a good bit in deep leagues and drafted and grabbed off waivers. It was a 3 for 3 in terms of me being able to grab him in dynasty leagues. So yeah, this is one that I am a true believer in. Xavier Restrepo is the one that has the least clear path. I like him. I again, kind of like I am in her, I was surprised that not just the draft capital wasn't there. It just didn't exist, right? Undrafted free agent. Unfortunately, he's got his work cut out for him. It's easy to like him because he has that existing rapport with Cam Ward. I do warn you, though. So did Bo Nix and Troy Franklin, and that didn't really amount to much. So that's not always exactly what does it, right? There's a lot more working against him, unfortunately. He's great, but there's more working against him than there is for Iron Manor and DK. Other receiving cores that we need to look at, a couple more, and we're going to wrap things up. Green Bay, obviously. Yeah, that's one we'll end with there. The Green Bay receiving core is one that we have to look at. Because based off ADP, this one is frustrating for me. I'm a Packers fan, right? Based off ADP, you're getting very good value for both Jaden Reed and Matthew Golden. The problem is trying to figure out which one of them can emerge as a clear wide receiver one, and if they can emerge as the clear wide receiver one. If that happens, then we want to have the shares for that, guys, because even if that is clear in training camp that there's a preference one way or the other, we're still going to get extreme value. They're not going to be vaulted up draft boards because of the perception of the Green Bay receiving core being functionally a committee, right? But that's not the design of the offense. They just haven't had a true wide receiver one since Davante Adams. They can operate that way if somebody can step up and be that. Now, Jaden Reed, he is now, I'm a believer in year 3 breakouts. I like those that happen with Nico Collins, but a lot of times for those to happen, there has to be a logical reason, right? When you were looking at Nico, the reason for his lack of production before that was greatly tied to the struggles of the Texans offense. Not really the same situation for Jaden Reed. And last year was weird because his volume actually went down compared to his rookie season. Now, Reed primarily operates out of the slot. That's also a key little factor there. Whereas Reed is primarily a guy who's going to stay in the slot. Matthew Golden is incredibly versatile. They'll likely use him on the outside. The Packers haven't had a consistent, reliable producer on the outside since Davante Adams, and Golden does profile as somebody who can fit that role. So we got to pay attention to that in terms of the usage there. I know some people fear the return inevitable. I think there was a video that went out of Christian Watson running. That's cool and all. Again, we talked about players coming off of ACLs and whatnot. You just need to proceed with caution. I don't think that there is a scenario where you need to be saying, I'm not going to draft either Packers receiver because I'm worried about the contributions of Christian Watson or any of the bevy of other wide receivers, Savion Williams, Romeo Dobbs. Like, there's a lot going on there. But it comes down to those two in Golden and Reed that we really want to pay attention to. One other short one real quick. We got to watch Chris Godwin's progress. One, because less about where we're drafting Chris Godwin, because you got the ADP discount on that one. It's more about determining the opportunity for Emeka Egbuka and the path he has within the Bucs offense. One more thing that we have to pay attention to in training camp, it is not skill positions, it is the Seattle offensive line and the effect that it has for our skill positions. Flat out, plain and simple, the most critical thing for the Seattle offense is their offensive line. I find it a bit perplexing when they signed Sam Darnold. I'm like, okay, you better have a plan to fix that offensive line. And I don't think their plan was effective enough. So that's what we need to watch out for during training camp. We need to know how this offensive line is going to be. They did make some changes. They obviously drafted Gray's Abel. But at the end of the day, I don't think they did enough to upgrade that offensive line for what Sam Darnold needs as support. And that is no offense to Sam Darnold. He is a pocket passer, and he needs a good offensive line. And we've seen that. He can be perfectly fine, and he will be able to give us all the Jackson Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp highlights in the world that we need to see if he can stay upright and not be aggressively pressured. Maybe I am wrong. But PFF doesn't disagree with me. They think that Seattle's offensive line will be trashed this season as well. Unfortunately, they have it ranked 30th heading into the season. So we got to both be wrong on that one. So pay attention to that one. Monitor it like a hawk for the Seahawks because it severely affects our wide receivers there. And then one more fun mailbag question before we wrap things up. I got from McBreeze11. As a Packers question, very tailored to me specifically. Does Bo Melton start if he converts to DB? This is fun because we have wild dreams, right? We've been given these wild dreams of dual designations and how they can be advantageous in IDP leagues, or even Scott Fishbowl as you guys are, doing your drafts there. I haven't had mine yet. My draft is I'm doing a live draft. It's this Saturday in Houston, which is weird because I've always been an early drafter. So it's strange to me not to have all the ADP and stuff heading into it. Feel like I'm going to get into my head. But with that in mind and the kind of dual designation there, I don't really think we can have any kind of hopes and dreams that Bo Melton is going to be interesting in any way, shape, or form. Sadly, I don't think he's going to see significant time on defense. I think the Packers were pretty comfortable this offseason with the moves they made in their secondary. They were definitely prepared to part ways with Jair Alexander, and they've essentially been working without Jair Alexander for the majority of the season for the past 2 seasons anyways. He's played like 7 games each season, so I think Melton has a way to go before he can progress to make significant contributions in the secondary. And if he did, that would be cool. That would be interesting if we could get another dual designation guy. But I sadly don't think it's going to be relevant enough for us. But I appreciate the question. Cross our fingers that maybe he actually does contribute. Although I do want to note that, again, as I mentioned before, in case anyone's worried that Jair Alexander's departure is going to be lighted up against Green Bay's secondary, it's going to be the same thing you saw last year. It's going to be average. It'll be okay because they had essentially been playing without him. They planned for this. They made an addition to the secondary as well. So there shouldn't be any dramatic changes. But other than that, that wraps things up. I appreciate you all joining in. As a reminder, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on all platforms. If you're not already subscribed, be sure to subscribe to Player Profiler as well. And if you're in the mood for more subscriptions and follows, you can subscribe to me and follow me at It's Tera Time literally anywhere on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. I'm going to be ramping up content this off season because why not? We're heading into training camp, so there's going to be plenty of little tidbits for us to get into, and it's going to be so much fun. So, my God, we're just so close to preseason football and all the goodness, and then we're finally back. We're back. All right, we had a nice long episode there, a little bit over an hour. I appreciate you joining in. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you all next week. If anyone is doing any drafts, Scott Fishbowl or anything else, good luck. I hope you do amazing. Let me know how you do. Talk to you guys next week.